So, Ray Fisher tells all to the Hollywood Reporter. Yeah. In a lot of ways, there's no news in this. There's a little more detail in some of the conversations that supposedly is what upset him. But he doesn't bring any real evidence whatsoever. It's a pretty long article. I'll put the link in the description below. But the conclusion is very simple. Joss Whedon is and was an asshole. Quite simply, he's completely right about that. And his initial response when he started these complaints, the middle of last year, he's pretty spot on. If he left it there, he'd be fine. But then Black Lives Matter had a resurgence in wake of George Floyd's death, and then we had a bunch of riots and murders. Yeah. And all of that. And, well, this inspired him that he had to speak out and tried to shoehorn racism in his personal experience with the reshoots of Justice League. And that's what he's done. Now, hey, in a way, to be fair, the superficial and tawdry, cheap tokenizing and usage of race and or sex and whatever else you can throw in the hopper is commonplace in Hollywood. And in a lot of ways, this whole thing has circled around back and bit a lot of people in the ass. Most notably Joss Whedon, who was an uber leftist and supposed male feminist, but used his positions of power to have sex with as many hot starlets as he could get his hands on. And things go to his head. He's an arrogant asshole guy. And so initially when Fisher said this, I said, yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that's how that was. And there were other people stepped forward on that. The other actors did. Gal Gadot said she had her problems with him. Apparently this dealt with the scenes where the Flash falls on top of Wonder Woman. She refused to film it. The stunt double did it. Apparently the stunt double didn't want to do it. Got screamed at by Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon sort of threatened Gal Gadot's career and said, I can make you look stupid in this movie. I'm the writer and you shut up and do what I tell you. And apparently was disparaging of Patty Jenkins. What have you. Well, Gal Gadot was a big star by then because Wonder Woman had been a smash success. So if she's upset, even the higher-ups are going to take note of it. This was not the case for Ray Fisher. He hadn't had a smash hit movie, so he doesn't have that position. It's got jack squat to do with his race. So the situation goes that Joss Whedon was an a-hole. Made fun of him, talked down to him. Ray Fisher was just in a conversation, as he was it, about the changes of his character from the Snyder version to the Joss Whedon version. And Whedon shut him down and said, I don't take notes from Robert Downey Jr. I'm not going to take it from you, or something along those lines. And, was very short and snotty with him. Okay. So Joss Whedon's an asshole. Fine. He's not a racist, other than he could have been another guy who tries to exploit it. He recently talked about rebooting his famous Buffy character, but this time she would be black. Then all the feminists got mad because you can create a new Vampire Slayer, but not race swap the original. Oh, yeah, that was hilarious. Yeah, Mary Sue was all mad at that and stuff. Funny how that works, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, he's in exile now, so it doesn't really matter. He got me too, and all that stuff. But then I guess Ray got a taste of power, and he's seeing how the game's played and decided he was going to play in it too. And so he didn't stop with Joss Whedon. So he goes after Jeff Johns. And so what was it between him and Jeff Johns? This was a thinly veiled threat. Well, Jeff Johns was upset with him because he went over Jeff Johns' head. Seems similar to what Gal Gadot did, but of course he doesn't have her star power, and complained about the conditions on the set and all that. Jeff Johns says, hey man, not cool. You're going to ruin your reputation around this town with that kind of activity. So, that was the big threat. Well, not only it's true. People start, he's not easy to work with and stuff like that. But you don't talk to Ray Fisher like that. God damn it. Don't you know who he is? Oh, you don't? Yeah. So Well, how is Jeff Johns a racist in this? Well, apparently, and this all involves other people, not Ray Fisher. He has no firsthand knowledge of this whatsoever. Apparently, on the Krypton series, it was at some point someone wanted to hire a black actor to play the role of the character that was to be Superman's grandfather in the series. Yeah, it's not one of those dumb shows where it's a Superman show without Superman, like the Batman shows that are Batman shows without Batman. Yeah, and it failed. But anyway, the point being that there was going to be this casting, and apparently Jeff Johns is the one stepped in and said, "Well, no, that wouldn't work." Because, in case you hadn't noticed, Superman's white, although he will now be black thanks to a bad robot. So how about that, huh? But and apparently Ray Fisher kind of threw shade at that, saying it was a tactic against him. Yeah, whatever. So this was supposed to be evidence of his terrible racism, and so. And despite the fact that he was married to a black woman, and is now married to an Asian woman. So I don't know. But then again, in today's bizarre woke definition of white supremacy supremacists always marry outside of their race. I don't look for logic; it is not there. Besides logic and reason, these are also principles of white supremacy, apparently. So, yeah. So anyway, but the Krypton show is supposed to be the evidence against him. He talks about elements of that there were other witnesses, that he's protecting their identities, but he's the accuser here. So the burden of proof was upon him. What was their proof that he had anything? I remember him talking about. They don't really approach this in the Hollywood Reporter article, but he talked about that Joss Whedon didn't like the skin tone, so the color scheme of the film was changed. The color scheme is obviously changed between the two. You have the original cut, which is the Snyder cut, which you can see on HBO Max, and I recommend it. It's pretty good. Is a desaturated look and blue tones. The Joss Whedon version of it is oversaturated and red tones. And that's it. The article I think doesn't go into that because I guess it's trying to be pro Ray Fisher in this, but there's not a lot to go on. So it's a pretty stupid example to point to, but so probably maybe that's why it's not in it. I don't know, but it's so that's one of the elements that was brought up for it as far as racism goes, but it just isn't there. The booyah thing comes up, which initially at one point Ray Fisher didn't really have a problem with it. Then he turns around and says, well, this is like black characters always have to have catchphrases like Arnold from Different Strokes and JJ from Good Times and stuff like that. Because, white characters never get anything like that. I will be back. No. They don't. So the stretching of trying to manipulate the narrative to where this is evidence of racism in there is absolutely awful. There's a conversation he had with Jeff Johns where they were encouraging him to look at the cyborg character now as not so much as Frankenstein, but rather Quasimodo from the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and all this stuff. And he manipulates that into this idea that the white man was telling a black man how to be black. That is absolutely not what the case was, but that's how Ray Fisher puts it. They talk about this. And that Jeff Johns they were trying to get away from the dark tones of the original Snyder Cut version into something lighter. Although I got to admit, neither Quasimodo or Frankenstein are happy stories. But the description was that Quasimodo was jovial, cathedral cleaning individual or something like that. But anyway, that's what they're shooting for the movie overall. But Ray Fisher revolves everything around him. Granted, this was about his character that he was playing, but he says it was like he was assuming how black people would respond rather than taking the advice from the only black person, as far as I know, with any kind of creative impact on the job. The only one emphasizing race in these discussions is Ray himself. He keeps going back to their being white as a negative in every aspect of this. all that really happened was that he complained about Joss Whedon. Jeff Johns seems to have told him to suck it up and get along with it. He goes over Jeff Johns' head. Jeff Johns is upset about it. And so that's why Jeff Johns is a villain for Ray Fisher. He didn't do anything other than that. And really, it's not worth 5 seconds of anyone's time outside of it. But that doesn't stop Ray. He then drags Walter Hamada in this, who had absolutely nothing to do with the Justice League reshoots. And he goes on about Walter Hamada is this sleazy guy who was willing to throw others under the bus, but not Jeff Johns. Well, Joss Whedon, Walter Hamada openly admits is an asshole. And you agree with him on that, Ray. But his relationship with Jeff Johns was better, and he doesn't see him beyond that. Well, Ray can't take no for an answer, and you must bow before the will of Almighty Ray, apparently. I don't know. And so now Walter Hamada is supposed to be a villain that he suspects of manipulating things behind the scenes and the Warner Brothers investigation and all this stuff, which produces nothing. You know, Ray Fisher can't produce anything. He says, well, I'm protecting people. Burden of proof is on the accuser. This idea that Ray Fisher can do all the accusing and then these unknown sources who are protected can do this, and the accused are not to defend themselves. He just says it. And if you disagree, well, you're a racist. So this is absolutely disgusting. This is appalling. At the outset, just saying that Joss Whedon was an asshole on set, fine. That's good. He's got backup on that. I totally believe him on that. To push this further, to I don't know, he got a taste of power, I guess. I don't even know what it is. I mean, I know, again, this is sort of payback for everybody who, in Hollywood, they all deal with this tokenizing and jockeying for position and using race and sex and all that stuff and identity politics to get their position. It's really cheap and disgusting and horrible. So, hey, he's just playing the game, and so, yeah, I guess so. That doesn't make it good. So it's a little like a lot of these guys are getting bit off on the ass by the very thing that they dealt with and used for their own positions. So there is that, but that doesn't make Ray Fisher the good guy at all here. And so this is really terrible. So yeah, all he did was get himself fired from the whole thing, and it looks like, boy, they really held out a long time. So he's a bit of a spoiler in this whole thing about Snyder Cut and the divisions within Warner Brothers over it and everything. I would like to see the DCEU continue. I think the Snyder's ideas look to be better than stuff that I've seen since. A lot of people that took his place, it's Birds of Prey and crap like that. The Wonder Woman 84 movie was terrible. I don't want to see any more of that. Some of the silliness type stuff was what kind of dragged the Aquaman film down, even though it was successful. It was, because primarily it's just a cool adventure movie. But the dumb stuff in it kind of takes you out of the course of the story, which is always, a bad thing to do. But Ray Fisher is no one to blame but himself for what he did to himself here. And it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling to manipulate and try to extort your position here and use your skin color, and as if suddenly you're all black men and that sort of thing is terrible. And then, of course, just accuse people of falsehoods. So he's got nothing. He never had anything other than Joss Whedon was an asshole, which everyone agrees. And that, the guy was rude to him and stuff like that. And to everybody else, apparently. But that's it. The idea is that something would come out later, that at this point, and this is supposed to be it. He finally tells you what the conversation was with Jeff Johns, and it's nothing. In the end, it appears that Ray Fisher has only achieved in proving that he's just as much an asshole as Joss Whedon was. So, yeah. He apparently has burned every bridge possible for him at Warner Brothers, so I don't know if there is any continuation of the DCEU. I guess they're going to have to recast the role. Won't that be interesting? Yeah. but he just suddenly made himself a big stumbling block for the whole thing. So you can stand with Ray Fisher all you want, but I fail to see how that helps the Snyderverse, really, at this point. Especially since he's provided, again, nothing. You don't have to like these guys. I don't like Joss Whedon. I know Jeff Johns, I've liked some of his comic books, and some I didn't care for at all. But that doesn't give you the right to lie about the man and smear him with this garbage when it was demonstrably false. And all of this is just more of the Hollywood game today of manipulating people's emotions and fears through the course of identity politics to jockey for positions of power within Hollywood. And Ray Fisher, of course, is just another one of Hollywood, along with the rest of them, using that. So in the end, they're all guilty to some extent. But just because they're all guilty does not excuse Ray Fisher's guilt in trying to indulge this as well, because in the end, that's all he's got. You know, he just keeps pointing out they're all white and I'm black. You know, you can't fight racism with more racism. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness, so many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.